In any case, if they have to fight this war in West Asia, they need China.
美国副总统万斯带着整个代表团在伊斯兰堡的酒店大厅等了整整超过2个小时，才等到伊朗方面确认我们会来。这一幕让人窒息，这场谈判名义上是外交斡旋，两边坐着的一边是不可一世的美国，另一边是被制裁几十年的伊朗。特朗普政府联手以色列，发动了35天的密集空袭，扬言要打垮伊朗的全部军事能力。话音未落，这帮美军的轰炸却连一个地下设施都没炸到，因为伊朗人把所有武器导弹厂全部深藏在地下城市之中。不仅如此，这帮自以为是的美国军队反被伊朗打废了13个驻海湾基地，鼎鼎大名的美国第5舰队灰溜溜地逃出巴林，躲到公海上去了。更阴险的是，伊朗代表在出发前就开出了一份清单，要美国释放60亿美元冻结资金，要以色列在黎巴嫩停火，要让副总统亲自带队，每一条美国人都老实照办了。这到底还算是谈判，还是战败方在签投降书？让我们来看这位分析师是如何逐一拆穿的。
Good day, friends. The Islamabad talks have begun. Senior American and Iranian delegation, they are in Islamabad. Over the next 10 days, these delegates, they will either walk out or they will end the talks conclusively. But the point to remember is that these talks that the two delegations are doing, they are not about terms of a ceasefire, they are about terms of a surrender. This has to be understood. When we talk of a ceasefire, we are talking about two sides, both of which have leverage, and they are looking for a pause in the operation, that is ceasefire. In this particular case, what has happened is only one side has leverage and the other side has no leverage at all. It is Iran that holds all the cards, and this is what makes it a surrender. And to make it evident that this is a surrender, the Iranian delegation, even before it came for the Islamabad talks, it set certain conditions. It made certain conditions which had to be met, and they were met. For example, they said that Israel must do the ceasefire in Lebanon. That happened. Then they said that the Americans should release $6 billion of their frozen funds in the Qatari bank. That was done. And they insisted that Vice President J.D. Vance, he head the American delegation. Not because they trust J.D. Vance more than Witkoff or Kushner. They don't trust the Americans at all, and it is understandable. But they wanted J.D. Vance to head the delegation because J.D. Vance is in a senior position in the administration. He is the vice president. So the decisions can be taken faster on very sensitive talks. That will happen. And then before coming, Iran made it clear that the Strait of Hormuz is an internal waterway. It is not an international waterway. That Iran will decide how many vessels pass through the Strait of Hormuz each day, and Iran will decide the toll tax or the passage tax that it will levy on each vessel in Iranian currency. And to make the whole thing look extremely painful for the Americans, the Iranians, they made J.D. Vance and his delegate cool their heels for over 2 hours in Islamabad before Tehran confirmed that yes, the Iranian delegation would be coming for the Islamabad talks. So this is about surrender, it's not about ceasefire. And as I said, Iran has all the leverage, and it is very obvious what leverage it has. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran can shut down the Red Sea whenever it wants. In other words, Iran controls a large portion of global energy, global food, global economy, and global finance. And all these things impact the world on a daily basis. On the other side, President Trump, who started this war of aggression along with Israel on Iran, has exhausted all his military options with the capabilities that he has as present in the theater. He simply has no military option left. We know that this war started with a 35 days intense American and Israeli air campaign on Iran. It did not produce the desired results at all for the simple reason that Iran's military capabilities, they are all underground. They were not degraded by this air campaign of the Israelis and Americans. Because I've explained in my earlier videos also how over decades, the Iranians have built underground facilities, underground cities, So all their military capabilities, including their indigenous production facilities, everything is intact. That has not been affected. On the other hand, the Iranians in this campaign, they have totally destroyed or made inoperable 13 American bases on the GCC soil. Not only that, the Fifth Fleet of America, which with headquarters in Bahrain, it is no longer there. It's somewhere on the high seas, away from the site of the Iranian drones and the Iranian missiles. This is the state of affairs. So once the air campaign did not produce any results, we know that President Trump decided to bring in special forces. And 7,000 forces were brought in the theater. 5,000 Marines came from Japan and 2,000 airborne troops from San Diego. And then we know they did special operation because the whole idea was, let's do some special operation, declare a victory and go back. So a special operation was done on 3rd of April in the Isfahan province of Iran. And that went completely wrong for the Americans. It did not give any result, forget about close to a desired result. And in the bargain, they lost 6 aircraft. The Americans lost the F-15, C-130, 2 A-10s and 2 Black Hawk helicopters. So the point to make is that with the present capabilities in the theater, President Trump simply has no option at all, military option, and hence it is a military defeat of America, and therefore J.D. Vance and the American delegation, they are there for the Islamabad talks. But here is a problem. The Americans are very perturbed, and so is President Trump, because Americans cannot swallow this defeat in West Asia. Because America is the country that won the Cold War, or so they believe. Because they did not win the Cold War on the battlefield. They won the Cold War because Soviet Union disintegrated. But certainly, Americans were the global hegemon in the unipolar world. So they could project their power across the globe with 750 military bases around the world. So for a country like this, which has been a winner all along and which everybody thinks is the number one military power in the world, and Indians also think like that. In fact, Indians think like that America is the number one military power in the world. This is a condition or a situation which is completely unacceptable to the Americans. Moreover, President Netanyahu of Israel, he has made it very clear that even if Trump doesn't want to be in this operation any longer, he is not doing a ceasefire. He will continue with the operations. All he wants is the military wherewithal to come from America and the capabilities of the American Central Command. So the point that I'm making is that Americans are unhappy. They are looking for more options. What is it that they can do if these talks fail? Then what happens? So the options are immediate as well as in the foreseeable future, or perhaps a year away. As far as year away is concerned, what they are looking at, or President Trump is looking at, is a massive ground operation to build the capabilities for that. And for that, what they will need is a minimum of 1 million American soldiers trained and acclimatized for West Asia to fight a 21st century war. Now, this is not an easy thing at all. But the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has been told by President Trump to prepare the automate draft database. What this means is that all Americans in the age group of 18 to 25 years, their name should be there in the draft database, and this has to be done by December 2026. In other words, nothing will happen until 2026 December, and that is understandable. Understandable because a massive ground operation cannot happen. Summer months are not the good months for operations in the deserts, especially the GCC countries, because here the temperatures go up to 50 degrees centigrade plus. So the earliest they are looking at a massive ground operation is sometimes in the first half of 2027, provided, as we know that the Strait of Hormuz is controlled by Iran, provided they can take on the pressure, the global economy, and what all will happen to it, that pressure can be taken by America. So that's a big if there. So this is the contingency that they are working on. And of course, once they actually do the draft, they will require the approval of the American Congress. But Trump is preparing for that. And Trump has now finally decided, as far as his MAGA base is concerned, he need not bother about it. The base that wanted him to be the president of peace, which is why he has turned hostile towards Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and the like, the people who were there with him in the MAGA base. Now, in the short term, what they are looking at is to continue the operations. We know that Pete Hegseth has asked for additional $200 billion for the Pentagon. And then we know that President Trump, he has met up with American OEMs, the big companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing. But the problem with these companies is he wants them to produce interceptors, specialized ammunition, which is all in short supply today in West Asia. Americans don't have it. There's a big trouble. But the problem with these companies is that they are designers and integrators only. They don't do the manufacturing. The manufacturing is done by tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 companies of America. In other words, this whole process will be long drawn. It will not be easy to get these new interceptors or specialized ammunition in a hurry. So the only option then is to get these things from other theaters where the American capabilities are and to bring them to West Asia. And it is in this context that President Trump recently met the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. And he complained to him that, look, I am doing so much for NATO in the Ukraine war. NATO doesn't help me. So Mark Rutte has made this appeal to the NATO countries that we need to help America with warships. Now, warships don't help at all because I've already explained in one of my videos what sort of a military capabilities the Iranians have put right in the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. So warships will not help. In other words, what they are looking at is to get the interceptors and the advanced munitions from these theaters. And Secretary Rubio is looking at that long shot that in case there is a ground war, then he said that if we shut down the American capabilities with NATO in Europe, then we can get something like 80,000 American troops which are there, they can come. Then they are also looking at, President Trump is looking at to withdraw the capabilities from East Asia. Now, East Asia is where China is, and East Asia is where for the last decade plus, the Americans have wanted to do a security competition with China. We know that they already withdrew a THAAD system from South Korea, and they withdrew some 5,000 Marines from Japan. So they want to withdraw more. And for this reason, there are reports that President Trump has asked Pete Hegseth to rewrite the national defense strategy, which is the responsibility of Pentagon. In other words, to downgrade the security threat assigned to China in America's defense strategy. In any case, if they have to fight this war in West Asia, they need China, because China controls rare earth and China controls tungsten. Tungsten, 80% of the global production happens in China, and that is critical for advanced munition. But given the personality of Trump and the general hubris that the Americans have, President Trump has already warned countries that if you give military wherewithal to Iran, then all those countries, they will be charged 50% tariff on all the goods that they send to export to America. And obviously what he has in mind is China, Russia, North Korea, because there are reports that the Russians and the Chinese, they are now sending a lot of military capabilities to Iran. But it is also very clear to everybody that these are those countries which don't care much about American sanctions. So this is where the situation as far as America and the stocks is concerned and the West Asia theater is concerned. Now I want to talk about Pakistan. Pakistan, which is holding these important Islamabad talks. And what I want to say is, irrespective of what happens to these talks, whether they succeed or they don't succeed, as far as as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan now is set to have deep security and economic linkages with countries which constitute the heart of Eurasia today. And I'm talking of three regions which should be seen as a whole. I'm talking of Central Asia, West Asia, and South Asia. And Pakistan has built security and economic linkages which are very deep with these. And in the present world order, this is what military deterrence is all about. Because I've already said in my videos that this world order talks about sovereign equality and indivisible security. So let me just say how this has happened for Pakistan. It's very interesting. This is something that I have said before also, that after Operation Sindoor, Pakistan's geopolitical profile, it rose, and it now came to West Asia also. And Pakistan became the only country with which in the present multipolar world, all the three great powers, America, China and Russia, they are comfortable doing business with. And we also know that in West Asia, in 2025, Pakistan signed with Saudi Arabia the Strategic Defense Cooperation Agreement. Now what has happened is, because of the mediatory role, and more than that, this Islamabad talks that Pakistan now has finally succeeded in organizing. What Pakistanis have done is that on 6th of April this year, Pakistan Commerce Minister Jam Kamal Khan, he had a high-level virtual meeting with the Minister of Trade of EEU, which is the Eurasian Economic Union. The minister is Andrei Slipnov. And what the two sides agreed was to do a joint feasibility study, which would lead to a FTA, free trade agreement, between Pakistan and EEU. And we know that when we talk of EEU, the two countries, the important countries when you talk about economic relations, are Russia and Kazakhstan. And Russia, obviously, as I have said, is happy with Pakistan. So this is one aspect of that. Getting a FTA with EU. The more important or equally important aspect is that Pakistan is already a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. And we know that President Putin, in 2024, he announced Eurasian Security Architecture, which is a unique concept, which I have explained in my earlier videos, won't dwell on it now. And this Eurasian Economic Architecture of Putin, it has very strong linkage with BRI. So the point that I am making is that because of the BRI, because of good ties with the Central Asian republics, and especially with Russia, a great power, Pakistan then also becomes a part of the Eurasian Security Architecture. So this is what it is, that in all the three regions which constitute the heart of Eurasia, Pakistan then acquires the military deterrence of the New World Order. And this, I think, is a very big step or the big gain that Pakistan has made. Thank you so much.
看完这场分析，我脑海里只剩下一个念头：这个世界正在以肉眼可见的速度发生着根本性的转变。说实话，我看这场伊斯兰堡谈判，看到的不只是一场外交博弈，而是教科书级别的霸权焦虑正在实时上演。这是一个很典型的社会心理学现象。一个长期习惯了发号施令的人，一旦发现自己的话没人听了，第一反应不是反思，而是加倍施压，变本加厉。这就是今天特朗普政府的真实写照。我们来看几个数字：全球750个海外军事基地，每年超过8000亿美元的军费开支，在中东还有航母战斗群常态巡逻。这就是美国向全世界展示的所谓绝对实力。然而35天的密集空袭，连一个伊朗的地下设施都没能炸掉，反倒是自己的13个海湾基地被打成废墟。美国第5舰队从巴林灰溜溜地撤到公海，7000名特种部队冲进去，折损了数架军机，特别行动以惨败告终。数字不会说谎，我给大家打个比方，这就好比街上最恨的那个混混，手上拿着最先进的家伙冲进别人院子里砸了1个多月，发现院子里的东西完好无损，自家的门却被人砸烂了好几扇。这时候他不甘心又不敢再硬冲，就开始四处打电话叫人，叫欧洲兄弟送武器，叫本国年轻人去当兵，甚至开始重新整理兵役名册。但最快也要等到2027年才可能重新发动下一轮大规模攻势。问题是伊朗等得了，因为伊朗控制着霍尔木兹海峡，全球 20% 的原油每天都要从这条水道流过。这不只是一个军事筹码，这是一把扼住全球经济咽喉的钥匙。更让特朗普夜不能寐的是另一个字，钨。全球 80% 的钨产自中国，没有钨造不了精密导弹，打不了穿甲弹。 所谓的高科技战争根本打不下去，所以我们才看到这位美国总统一边跟伊朗谈停火条件，一边威胁说谁敢给伊朗输送军事物资就加之50%的关税。他心里指的是谁，天下人都心知肚明，但有些国家早就不把这个威胁当回事了。更耐人寻味的是巴基斯坦在这场谈判中扮演的角色，一个曾经被边缘化的南亚国家，如今成了美伊之间唯一能够斡旋的平台。这背后折射出的是一个多极化世界正在加速成型的现实。在我们眼里，这场伊斯兰堡谈判的意义早就超出了美伊双边关系本身。它告诉我们，那个由一个霸权说了算的旧时代正在加速走向终结。在我们中国人看来，这样的历史节点并不陌生。我们深知一个国家要真正站稳脚跟，靠的不是炸弹，而是让别人离不开你的能力。无论是霍尔木兹海峡的通行权，还是稀土核污的定价权，背后都是同一个逻辑。历史从来不为任何一个帝国永远停下来。罗马帝国衰落了，大英帝国衰落了，苏联解体了，每一个曾经不可一世的霸权走到最后都要面对同一个现实，时代已经不需要它了。不是因为有人打败了它，而是因为世界已经长大了，不再需要一个老大哥替他做决定。历史的车轮从来不问你准备好了没有，